Peter Maynard joined Microsoft in 2014 to pursue his interest in bringing together the best of marketing and communication. Peter feels a responsibility to enable businesses to achieve digital transformations so they can survive in the ever more challenging future. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Maynard.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I felt it was important in such a space like this that you actually run around a little bit because it's such a big place that we're working within. So over the last couple of days, I think you've all seen a lot of very interesting presentations. And it's very interesting to kind of understand what was the makeup, what was the one thing that was behind many of these different presentations. And what it really was it was your senses that allowed you to kind of comprehend the different things that you've seen, all of the different information that that you're taking notes on, that you're going to take away from this great event. And for me, what's important today is to take this little topic, take it a little bit further, and talk a bit more about a context called mixed reality. What makes up the kind of centerpiece of mixed reality, first of all, though, is one really key important sense that I think many of us will share seeing this presentation now, which is vision or sight. So sight is the key sense that kind of underpins everything that I'm going to talk about in my presentation, and I hope you kind of enjoy taking this little journey with me. So one of the things that we see when we see these different presentations is that they're all fundamentally underpinned by a physical reality. So this physical reality is very much a state of how things are when we see them, and they exist within our human senses. But very much over the last couple of years, we've had more and more through the way that computing has grown, having more digital realities, so working with computers, seeing the different things that we have there. And one kind of trend that we've seen a lot in Microsoft is that there begins to become a point where these two realities start to combine, that they start to come together. And this is what we call the blending of these two elements, is something that we call mixed reality. And this is the topic that I'm kind of going to be digging into today. So mixed reality as a term, it's thrown around quite a lot, but I think for many people it's sometimes quite hard to understand it. So I put these 3 different videos on here to kind of try and give you a bit more context on what does it mean. On the left-hand side, you can see there a video of virtual reality. Virtual reality is where you're very much closed off. You're in a very kind of, you can't see outside the goggles that you're viewing your experience within. In this case, this is a YouTuber who's playing a game on his device, and he's contained within that experience. But one area where people tend to find that there's this kind of confusion, or they're not really sure on what augmented and mixed reality, what the difference is between the two, I want to try and make that a little bit clearer for you. So as you've seen in this middle video here on augmented reality, you can see that someone's playing the very popular Pokemon Go game. And for me, Pokemon Go, it's kind of a good way to demonstrate what augmented reality is. So this guy that you've just seen in the video, he's walking around in a natural environment. But in his natural environment, it's basically just overlaying an image, overlaying a 3D image. But what's different about mixed reality is that it's directly anchored within your environment. So you're not just seeing something that's overlain, it's actually directly there in your environment. So the devices that you can use, they're actually working to find a way that you can actually, so for example, to give a quick example, if you were looking underneath a table, you would see objects that are directly linked there. It's not just an overlay of the reality. For me, that picture in the top right-hand corner, which is of Minecraft, is that you can see basically the wall blew away, and then you can see 3D objects directly behind the wall that you can then go and interact within. So when it comes to mixed reality, there's a range of different types of devices that we need to think about, and that many of you will probably be aware of already, that can help us to deliver such experiences. I think many of us are familiar with things like Google Cardboard, Samsung VR, Galaxy VR experiences. These are basically very portable experiences, but they're very much opaque, so you can't actually see anything outside of the devices themselves. And then on the tethered side, there's many good people in the tech fair showing off some tethered examples, particularly on the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive. You can find very good experiences here where people are trying to kind of work within these areas to portray or present a digital reality. Again, going back to what I mentioned before, this blending between the two is where you're finding that sweet spot between the digital and physical reality. And that's where we move into such devices like this one at the bottom left here, which is still very much early in production, which is basically an augmented reality device. But what's key in this case is that it's a tethered device. So this device is something that's connected directly to a computer, and you can't basically walk within your environment. So you're contained by the experience based on where you're plugged into. Top left, though, see-through devices that are also portable. So many of you, I think, like me, would have were aware about the announcement recently of the Magic Leap, their first device that they announced, and also the HoloLens. And for me, these devices basically take the best of both worlds, or they try to take the best of both worlds, which is that they're both see-through and portable, so that you can realize a lot of interesting experiences. But what kind of experiences would they be? What kind of things do we need to think about in terms of how such technology like this is going to change the way that we interact with technology in the future? So I'm going to walk you through a couple of scenarios. When I'm going through these, I want you to reflect on them, to think yourself about how could this be relevant to you. The first one is in 3D design and basically manufacturing. So in this case here, I've got a little video playing in the bottom right-hand corner. And the scenario you should think here, this is from Japan Airlines, is that if you're typically thinking of designing an aircraft engine, imagine the amount of prototyping, the work that needs to be done to create a real-life model that you're then going to try and work on, or you would want people to look at and think about how they're going to leverage this. When you have that device there directly in front of you, you can actually iterate with the process, work very quickly in the way that you can develop the future devices in 3D. I like to use the example, you can see someone there holding a device. And imagine if you just have that device in front of you, and then you look behind it, there's nothing there, because it's just a 2D screen. But if you're, in this case, if you have the aircraft engine, and you need to peel back those layers to see what are the actual fundamental elements within that aircraft engine, where are the fuel lines going, how do you directly go into it, what are the makeup of the pieces that make up the engine. These are all critical things that mixed reality can enable us to experience so that we can change the fundamental ways that we interact with objects. The next example, which is coming very fast, and I like the example that I show you in the little right-hand corner there at the bottom, is something which is called remote assistance or remote support. And this is all about how you can imagine a scenario where you're an engineer and you have a specialization in a couple of different areas, but you go out to fix a problem and you're not really sure how to fix that problem because perhaps you haven't worked with that example yet, but it's in a very remote location, so somewhere that's not easy to get to or it's really far away. And in this case, you can work directly with an engineer who's in an office. He can see through his eyes what you're seeing in reality, and then he can guide you on how can you make that work better, how can you solve the problem. I kind of like to joke that imagine in the future when you have a bomb disposal expert, it will be someone who will basically go to a location and they'll have no knowledge at all, and someone will be saying through their ear, I can see the red wire and the blue wire, make sure you pull out the blue wire. Obviously, they're not going to be too worried because they're sitting in the office at home, whereas the person who has the HoloLens on is the one that actually is putting themselves at risk. But the last one, and for me, this is kind of the piece that's very exciting in terms of what's going on in Belgium and what are some of the things that we're really accelerating here. is around a concept that we call heads up, hands free. So if you take those words, heads up, hands free, I think many of you in the audience, I can still see you even though the lights are very bright. Some of you will be looking at your phones or looking at, taking notes, working on your laptop, other different things. And you're trying to listen to my presentation. You're trying to see kind of how things are going. What am I talking about? How's this relevant to me? And when it comes to heads up, hands free, what's really important here is that right now, in certain applications, we need to have data directly in front of us on top of the environment we're operating within. So if you only have a situation where you are having to look at something like a textbook, reading some information, and then having to apply that to the scene in front of you, this can become very complicated. So what I'm excited to share with you today is a case in Belgium that we're working on right now together with all of these companies are primarily leading this project. And this is called Project SARA, or SARA, however you want to pronounce it, which is Surgical Augmented Reality Assistance. This is all of these companies that I mentioned down here, they're all directly involved in bringing this to life. But the key thing to understand here is that this was brought by research from Free University in Brussels, and the direct end user is the UZ Brussels. And now I'll explain a little bit more about the case that they've been working on. So if you look at this picture here, this shows you a bunch of different scans. There's 3D scans, there's MRI scans, there's X-rays. But the question would be, if you were diagnosed tomorrow with a brain tumor, if you were unfortunate to be in a position like that, wouldn't you want to know that the surgeon who is operating on you has the best chance of leveraging technology to make sure that he has a successful surgery? And so right now, they work with information like this. But when you have information like this, it's pretty much shown on devices like this one on the left here. And it shows you there a 3D scan. So if he came to operate on you, he has to look to the left. He sees a screen. And then he would be like, OK, I need to take the mental load of that situation and then apply it to the patient who's lying in front of me. And in the case of he always has to kind of realign, check between the two situations. But also, this is a device that's very big. It's quite heavy. And obviously, it's not so mobile to move around, so you can't do consultations with the patient outside of the OR. You can't give them more of an understanding of the situation that they have. So what did they think about? What was the solution that they wanted to work on? And what it was is that they came up with this idea, and they said, can we make a 3D model that we can apply directly over the patient so we can understand where the issue is within their body? You could almost think of it like X-ray glasses would be a good example. And so what they did was this in the video, and I'm going to talk you through this video. So as you can see here, the surgeon is putting on the HoloLens device. And immediately, using the scans, they've been able to develop the scans into a 3D model that's directly within his vision, and it's being applied onto the patient. And in this case, as he walks around, he can continually see where in the space, so it's fixed in space, this patient's skull. And then he can use his voice, so he doesn't have to use any of his hands or anything. He can use that to remove different layers. And as he removes the brain layer, he can see there the tumor in the brain. He can really understand directly where that problem would be in the brain. He can see how it's connected to different parts of the brain and really understand how he should approach that surgery. And if you think in the operating room of the future, these kind of realities are going to be the case, because you're going to have someone who can look at an image like that one that you have there. You can see all 3 layers of your scans in real life. And let's say in the future, we hope that this will be able to be used so that they can do surgery using these images directly. So again, it removes that point of having to switch between these different projects. So for me, I think this is a very exciting development. And it really reinforces the fact that we've got a very exciting future, and mixed reality will help us in such ways. If you want to learn more about the project, some of the team are actually here. So from the VUB and UZ Brussels, you can find them in the tech fair at booth 52. They actually have a great little demo that they've made there, so you can go and try out being a surgeon, although I wouldn't recommend it, trying to be a surgeon. But coming back to what I said at the start of my presentation, just to kind of close out with some last-minute thoughts, I said at the start of this presentation that we all are in a situation now where everything that we perceive is through our senses. But the question becomes, once we start having these mixed reality experiences, these devices that can augment our reality, that we can see objects on top of reality, what will the future hold? What will this look like? And for me, the key kind of thing to end with is a black slide. It's on purpose. Is that one thing I think is going to shift is that the internet and all the power of the internet, the data from the internet, has all kind of come to life through the fact that it's been through our screens. But just imagine for yourselves, as you walk away from this session and go and get a coffee, how will that change once we're able to leverage the power of the internet with the actual, by looking at things differently through devices that can augment our perspective. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to chatting with you in the coffee break. So thank you very much.